So, a huge aloha and mahalo, first of all, Joe. Welcome back, and we do appreciate you taking time to be a return guest on our Off the Road series.
Oh, thank you. Very nice to be here.
And you were the actually one of the first guests that we had when we got things rolling. And so, before we get into this tasty new album, because it's been a while since you've been on, as you try to tell us the story, picking up maybe where we last had you on, it was the summer of 2020. You were settling into the first era of this thing. As I recall, you had some really dramatic stories of when it started. But from after that, what are some of the things that you've been up to? What's your story been like?
Wow, so busy. What a crazy period. I wish it never happened, but here we are. And uh, I think the first thing, I mean, the last time we spoke, I think I played a acoustic guitar piece for you, some slide guitar or something like that.
Actually, it was electric. It was cool. You had like a drum machine beat playing, and
Oh, is that what it was? Okay.
yeah, it was
Um,
people like that. It was very fun. You improved it. It was we had our own exclusive piece actually.
oh, wonderful. Well, it's funny. The routine that developed was a lot of music started to come into the studio. I would record a lot of stuff and send it out really fast. So I had like a setup that was perfect for that kind of thing. Even a
Sure.
couple of times I'd film myself playing. Someone would then put it all together with some of their other performances, and it looked like it was, live kind of a thing. But it was, I guess, it was live clips that were stuck together unlive and then turned into something. But then once the record really got finished, and I had all these paintings to do, over 100 canvases to paint. Everything got changed in the studio.
Mm,
And as you noted before, the Marshalls and the amps in the back there, they're all kind of set up for rehearsing, but not for broadcasting
sure.
anymore. So the workspace has gone through this crazy revolution. Just last weekend, I was in Miami attending my very first gallery exhibitions of my artwork. That was surreal. I never thought I'd ever be, walking into a gallery and seeing my paintings
Hey.
on the wall and having people buy them, and spending time with people. That was a cool thing, actually. Spending time with people again, fans. That was a unique thing I'd missed since, the early days of 2020.
And all masked up and in like a thing, or with no mask.
Yeah, no, everybody masked, and even though it was Florida, everyone was masked, and everyone was really cool about it.
And
I
how
think they
many
knew
people? It's indoors.
it was indoors, both galleries, one in Miami, one in Boca Raton, I guess exactly.
And how many of
And
your pieces are on the walls and stuff?
the Wentworth Gallery has got a little over 100 pieces. There were, I think, 11 guitars, but the rest of them were all canvases. And we sold quite a few pieces both nights. But the setup was great because, you get 100 people in a small gallery, it fills up really fast. And people are looking at all the artwork. And then when people decide to purchase a piece, we come into a back room, and I get to spend 15 minutes with them and tell them what went into painting it, what I was thinking. These are some, it's an acquired taste. I have to warn people. I paint some crazy ideas. It's not Bob Ross or anything like that.
What got you into doing it? Because you do all kinds. You got the comic book. You're kind of like into all this
Yeah,
different stuff. What was the? It's always been a part of your life, I guess, and it just
it
matriculated to
has.
this.
Yeah. Because I grew up, my two older sisters have degrees in fine art, and they
Huh.
became professional artists. My dad could paint, even though he rarely did, but when he did, he had a real talent for it. So I got pressed into service quite early when I was young. But I was the crazy musician in the family and couldn't draw a straight line. I was always drawing, horrible sci-fi faces, and they were worried about me.
Were you
So
doodling on your notebook like the band logos and stuff?
everybody, everything. But I mean, I was producing quite a lot, but it didn't really turn into something until probably the Extremist album. I had spent a good 5 months living in a hotel room in LA trying to finish that record, and I started to draw more, and it wound up in that CD booklet, and then the images wound up on tour T-shirts.
Right.
Then they became picks, and then like guitar straps, like this thing over here, and it just grew into something much bigger. I eventually put out a digital art book in 2013, and then immediately thought, okay, I have to learn how to paint on canvas. I really want to figure this out. Um, I just happened to have married an artist, so I've known, when I met Rubina, she was getting her degree at the San Francisco Academy of Art, and so again, I'm living with someone who's got a lot of art stuff in the house.
Right.
My son eventually got a degree in art and film. And so that's, I wound up being the odd one out, the one not really producing enough in the art world. So I finally sort of said, please teach me, what brush do I use when I want this? What paint do I use when I use that? And she got me started. So that was about, I don't know, 8 years ago or something.
It's wild because
And
we have Herb Alpert too. He comes on. He does painting as well. You guys would be.
yes,
Have you ever seen his stuff? Because it would.
yes,
Oh, you have.
it's really good. I mean, people who live a creative life, we just can't help it. You give us a ball of clay, we're going to do something with it. It's just the way that we think. You wouldn't want us to perform brain surgery or fix your car or anything like that. Maybe Jeff Beck,
Right.
but other than that, we're just good making things up, and being creative. So yeah, so I really jumped at the opportunity to paint, and it came about through Scene 4 Art Collective. They were photographing me in the dark wearing LED lace gloves to create this really otherworldly computer art that they print on canvases. And then once they saw my artwork, then they said, well, let's do some mixed media stuff together where I paint on top of the prints they make. And that led to an introduction to Christian O'Mahony at Wentworth Gallery, who said, please, if you can give me a few hundred actual canvases, we'd love to, help bring your artwork to your fans. So,
And how do you do the business part? Like when you merge their art and your art, is it an agent who negotiates how you're going to make the dough off of that kind of thing? I mean, how does
what? That is a great question, because that what I found out was that the art world is crazier than the music world, and I thought there was nothing crazier than the music business, but it's crazy. So yeah, you've got agents, you've got managers, you've got gallery people, but in the end, partnerships are extremely important, and a lot of people in my field like to keep, they circle the wagons and they like to protect themselves, but they're protecting pennies, and in so doing, they're cutting off possible creation of art, of new art, bringing stuff out of them. If I had said no to Scene 4, they never would have seen me paint, and they never would have introduced it, that work to Christian, and Christian never would have thought, well, maybe this guy, can actually do it. And then the whole thing about when you start to have shows and galleries, you have to go meet people. You can't just send them the artwork and say, send me the check.
Right. There's work involved.
It's very much like the music business.
Yeah.
You have to go on tour and meet your fans and be live with them. You know what I mean?
Oh, that's true.
It's that part of it I like, and it feels totally natural. So, but the in-between is a bit weird. So what I do is I'll do the artwork and I'll show up and meet the fans. Everything else in between, I have people handling that for me.
And what's up with the actual plan? Because I was looking at your schedule and I saw some of those dates that are coming up at that place you mentioned, the Wentworth Gallery or whatever it was.
Yeah.
And on the other side of it is the music. And so you have this new record, The Elephants of Mars, coming out April 8th, still the date on that. So
yes, it is.
I don't see tour dates though listed on the site yet, unless I was missing something, because that happens. But so what's up with? Because it's already. I just look at it like, wow, he's in a room with 100 people. I guess that's what the art thing is. So what's the? I mean, that sounds a little scary. What's the next plan for playing the music? And are you a little apprehensive doing it while all this stuff is going on?
Yeah. I tell you, the scariest component of touring for an artist like myself is the tour bus. This is where we have been trying our hardest to figure out how to keep the crew and the band safe 7 days a week, traveling on a little tube
Right.
through 17 countries in Europe. The stage is kind of a safe place. You get a bunch of fully vaccinated, boosted people that are standing far enough away from each
Right.
other. They're far away from the crowd. We played big enough places where it's not, crammed up close to people. And in the audience, the venues have figured out how to keep the patrons safe, which is great. Where it all falls down is behind the
Traveling.
curtain,
Yeah, yeah.
behind the stage, right? Which is we've got this traveling circus of crazy people, me included, and it's communal living, and we can't really control who we might meet for a second and what we might bring back into the little circus. And eventually we all have to take our masks off and sleep on this tour bus for 9 weeks, right? So it's going to happen. It's in this moment in time. Someone's going to get ill, and it means that we may be in a country where they've got very strict
Yeah.
restrictions, which means we may have to suddenly quarantine.
Blow the whole tour apart is what you're saying.
Yeah, the whole tool falls apart. Economically, I can't withstand the tour being sidelined and then losing all those dates. And
So you haven't played live yet since this happened. You've been sidelined the entire time.
the entire time, yeah.
Wow.
I
See,
played
that's
live. I played live for you.
right. That's just a trip is so many different stories, from Matheny, who's back doing it, to you, who's not, and I mean, just like it's wild because, and then people will start a tour like the Doobies, they were all stoked, and then people, like you said, they get sick, the tour gets exactly
Yeah.
what you said happens, over and over. So yeah, I just wonder about that because when I was looking at your site, the art is getting a lot of juice, and there's a new record, but obviously, yeah, because I wouldn't want to. I wouldn't even imagine. I haven't seen, so I have not seen a thing. It was March 7th of 2020. Carol Burnett was at the Blaisdell Concert Hall, and I had her on the phone, and and it was great. It was huge, hugely rewarding. And she was like, "Come meet me at the thing." And I'm thinking, like, the thing was already, we do news, so I already was like, yeah, yeah, I'd love to come meet you. And we got to actually stand there and get our picture taken. And it was and I felt nervous the whole time in the damn crowd, and no masks yet. I think a couple people had them. And I mentioned that because I have not seen anything since then, and I wouldn't go see anybody. I mean, I don't know what it would be. Maybe if Zeppelin with Jason, at the Blue Note, but it would take I don't know what to get me into it. So I look at you like when you do it. Is there another? Are you looking at any of the? Is there a date plan that when this thing would be unveiled?
Well, any day now we'll find out if the European tour is on.
Okay.
We are, we talk to our agent, our promoter friends in Europe, venue operators. Boy, it's crazy for them, and they're just trying to let us know because it's really hard, to book tour buses and hotels and flights and all this kind of stuff while this chaos is going on. My band and crew have been really great, hanging in there and standby while we're all waiting. So any day I'm going to have news about that, but right at this moment I don't. I do know that our fall tour is booked and will go public pretty soon. So that's going to happen. And I feel really good that, by the time the summer comes, things will change dramatically, and people will be able to start to congregate. And it's mainly, as we said before, it's about the response to a positive test. What does that mean to a traveling group?
Yeah.
I talk a lot with Sammy Hagar, and the way he's been doing it is that he's got a private plane, he's got a small band, skeleton crew, doesn't book more than maybe 2 shows a month.
He's already playing, right?
Yeah, and he's been doing it the whole time. And so if anything happens, it's he only has to cancel maybe 2 shows at the most, And this way he's able to continue with all his other businesses, but still go and have fun with his fans as long as he keeps it small and he doesn't book like we do. We have to go 9 weeks straight, 6 shows a week. And I watched I've got friends who work with the Rolling Stones. Same thing, they're playing these huge places. They all have separate dressing rooms. They all fly privately, they can afford
to do that,
to maintain a very high class bubble. And but most of us can't. So we're waiting. But I tell you, once these restrictions fall down and we get to party again, it's going to be fantastic. I just can't imagine how great concerts are going to be when, it's going to be such a relief. People
Yeah.
are just going to like open up, their emotions are just going to explode.
And your first one, all the pent up energy of not having played, because for you, it's going to be, like you said, comparatively, different people have different stories. Some folks, it's been a long time since they played.
Yeah.
Other folks, it's they've been like Sammy doing it the whole way. You just mentioned the Rolling Stones, and one of the fascinating things about talking to our really esteemed guest, Joe Satriani, one of the greatest guitar players of all time. You sort of take it for granted, Joe, because you're such a nice guy. You're so easy to talk to and fun and down to earth. And now you're an artist too, and so you have this whole other thing. But the Mick Jagger experience, and so we've been getting a lot of fantastic stories on this Off the Road series, and I can't think of a better one. So if you could try to reflect, as just having mentioned the Rolling Stones, and obviously you've got a connection with them, tell the story of how it all happened for you to get to work with Mick. First meeting him, which I can imagine because you're a music fan, it must have been a little intense. And then he just start there, if you will, how it all came together, how it happened, and first meeting Mick Jagger, who you would work for.
Yeah, it was such an unlikely story, but starting with 87, late 87, I finish Surfing with the Alien. It gets released. It surprises the record company because it charts. I think 185. It landed on Billboard charts at 185. I was completely, surprised. Like, this can't even chart. How's that possible? So the label president calls me up and he says, you're going to have to put a band together and tour. And I said, well, I've never like taken the stage and played instrumental music before. I don't have a band. It's like, this is just like a one-off thing. I thought you guys were going to fire me, run me out of town, And he's like, no, book a tour. So we booked this little tour, playing 2 shows a night at these small clubs. Brutal. Within the first week, I find out I'm losing like $8,000 a week, which I don't have, and I'm thinking, what am I going to do? And all of a sudden, the next day, phone rings. It's one of my former managers from Berkeley, California. And he goes, oh, I got a good one for you. How would you like to audition for Mick Jagger's band? And we sat there and just laughed on the phone for a minute. And because he knew like I was the wrong guy, I'd never do it. But he also knew that I'd be like, I'm definitely going just to go, know. And so it turns out that Mick's been in New York City for about 6 months.
At that time, you're saying? At
that time, yeah. And he'd been there rehearsing his first solo tour. Jeff Beck was the first guitar player. He left. They had auditioned about 60 people. And the people at Bill Graham Presents, Bill Graham himself, they were not yet my managers, but I had asked them to manage me a couple of times. And they were producing the show for Mick. So my name comes up. I think it was Doug Wimbish, the bass player, who held up a Guitar World and said, I met this guy 6 months ago. He's pretty crazy. Let's get him in here. And the Bill Graham people said, oh, we know Joe. He lives in the San Francisco area. We can call him. So I'm supposed to play at the Bottom Line about, I think, 2 days later. So I'm heading to New York anyway. So I go to the city. I walk in there and I'm basically just playing with the band, no Mick. And we're just sitting there running through some crazy songs. And it's all fun. I mean, it's Simon Phillips on drums and Doug Wimbish on bass. Lisa Fisher's there singing. Phil Ashley on keyboards. Just like the greatest musicians at SIR downtown. And then all of a sudden, Mick comes walking in. And the funny thing is he had just done an interview for something a little bit more conservative. So he's wearing like a Cosby sweater or something. Totally different kind of thing that I was expecting. But he comes in and he goes, oh man, I've been listening on the other side of the door. I just love it. Let's keep going. And he was like the funniest, most relaxed party guy ever. And we just ran through a bunch of Stone songs and blues songs. And he just wanted to have a good time. And then he just said, I really want you in this band. And would you say yes? Would you join us? And I just said to him, well, yeah, great. I'm on tour. I said, I'm playing at the Bottom Line. You want to come down and sing a song? And then I thought, I heard myself say it. And I thought, oh, what? How presumptuous of you, but he looked at me and he went, yeah, I'll be there.
Whoa.
And then so the next day we're at the bottom line, and I tell the guys, you know, this is going to sound really weird, but I think Mick Jagger's coming. And they're like, yeah, sure. Right. So of course Mick shows up.
They didn't know you had that, like, all that
No, they knew it, but they just figured, you know, that they took one look at me and said, no, sorry, you're not what we're looking for, you know, because I've never really looked the part, you know. I mean, it didn't look like Ron Wood or something like that, you know, all cool all the time. So, and anyway, so, but Mick shows up and he just like a regular guy, he comes backstage, which is a kitchen, you know, if you've ever been to the bottom line, it's just a teeny little room. And one fruit basket you get for 4 sold out shows.
No.
That's what we got. One, they didn't replenish it.
Oh my God. This is a famous club in New York he's talking about here.
But, you know, Mick shows up, he doesn't care. And he goes, what are we playing, Joe? And I said, how about Red House? And he went, yeah, okay, just call my name and I'll jump on stage. And he walks out. And the other guys are like stunned, like that was just Mick Jagger. And the guys didn't even know how to play Red House, which kind of shocked me. They were like real progressive rock guys, you know.
How did you pick a tune and know Mick would even know the words? How do you do something?
I just said it, you know.
Unreal.
You know, they say, you know, 99% of the music business is just like showing up. And this is like, you just show up. And then whatever comes to mind, you just do it. Wow. You say it. And so there we were. And we finished the set, and I thought we were killing it that night.
And he hasn't come on yet.
No, and so I told the audience I had a friend who was going to come up and sing a song and give him a break. And that was the extent of my comedy routine. Anyway, and then Mick comes running on, and the place totally exploded. It was like one of those things where you think you're all that, and then a real superstar shows up, and you know you shrink, and then they grow, and you go, oh, okay, this is the real deal here. And he charmed the audience, and he sang great, and it was, you know.
And how many people are in the crowd? It's one of those little places too.
Little places. I don't know, 100, 150, 200.
And they're experiencing him in that. And then you guys go and do this. Now, what's the size of the venues that you were doing on your tour with Mick?
Jesus. The Tokyo Dome, 2 shows sold out at the Tokyo Dome. What's that, 95,000 capacity? We did also really large arenas that were, I don't know, 35,000. And then we did Australia, New Zealand. I think in Jakarta, that was 120,000. That was insane.
Whoa.
There were riots at the end of that whole story. So we're playing that show in Indonesia. And at one point, Mick calls everyone backstage, like in the middle of the show. And he says, okay, don't freak out. He said, you see that smoke over there? And we look, you know, through the curtain on the outside of the stadium, and there's black smoke everywhere. And he said, you know, there's riots out there. They're just like, the people are rioting because they can't afford the tickets, and they're burning cars. And I think what they're going to do is they're going to have us escape somehow with like a false promise of an encore. And then they're going to open the doors to sort of alleviate the riot that's going on outside.
And this is during the set. He tells you this.
Yeah, right. And so we go out. We try to finish the set. We come off the stage, you know, pre encore. The lights are on, so everybody thinks we're coming out. They're shooting fireworks. We run into these vans that have black tape on all the windows. And there's literally Jeeps with machine guns on them in front of us and behind us, right? And we're snuck out of the back while the fireworks are going on. And we're only, I don't know, 5 minutes from the hotel. So, you know, and we don't know what's going on because there's, you know, we're in these cars and it's black inside.
Right, you can't see anything.
Can't see anything. We're all freaking sweaty like you wouldn't believe because it's, you know, Jakarta. It's 100% humidity.
What month is this that this is going on?
This would have been November.
Okay.
So of '88. So I mean, you're right by the equator. I mean, It doesn't matter.
And it's a big outdoor stadium show with 120,000 people.
Yeah. So so we get back to this hotel and we get invited to the rooftop with a couple of movie stars and politicians and wealthy people, the kind of thing that would happen when somebody like Mick Jagger shows up in a
Sure.
country like this. And I just remember holding my drink and looking out towards the stadium, and it's just black smoke, and you hear sirens. And there was a BBC reporter there, and he was telling me that it was insanity. They had literally, when we left, they opened the doors so that the rioters would go in, and we would get free passage out. But what they did is they wound up attacking all the people on the inside. So there were over 100 cars that were burned on the outside. And then these people just went crazy and attacked each other in a crazy fit. And it felt really weird. I mean, it was one of the worst experiences of my life to think that I had something to do with this horrible turn of events. Mick was furious, of course. He's just like,
Well, yeah, where is he during all of that happening?
he's standing there like us, just like going like, what happened? And he wants to, he's asking Bill Graham, what happened?
Bill
And
Graham was right there.
yeah, it was insane. It was just one of those things where you're in a foreign country and you're not in control of any of it. It was the government that decided to do this, and the promoter, and so luckily the next day we got out of there. It cost a fortune to get all of our gear out because we didn't.
It didn't
No
get
one.
trashed by the crowd or anything like that.
No, luckily it was the crew worked overtime to get it out, and it was flown out at. I mean, I can't imagine the expense of flying the gear out on the next set of flights, rather than usually you put it on a boat, and it would. That's how you save money when you're moving gear around the world. But yeah, that was a crazy experience. And then, 24 hours later, we were in beautiful New Zealand, a world away.
Regular show goes forward then.
Regular set of shows.
Were people
Yeah,
coming?
outdoor shows.
Did you guys have openers who were important or like noteworthy sort of bands opening, or at the same time were there guests and people who showed up, like, because in the way that like you said, there are sometimes, because it's mixed, sometimes people just come out of the woodwork, or there could be celebrities that vacation or live in unusual spots.
Yeah, when we were in March, when we were in Osaka, Japan, Tina Turner was finishing her
Oh.
massive tour, and she came on.
Is
And
87 again we're talking about, right? I'm trying to make sure.
88. It was
88 now.
88.
Okay,
Yeah.
88.
Yeah,
Continue.
that was the crazy year for me.
Got
Yeah,
it. Okay,
I went from nowhere to somewhere in like 0.2 seconds.
so back to Tina. So what's that all about? What's your memory of that? What happened exactly?
Well, Tina Turner's amazing.
Of course.
She's really, really amazing. Again, like Mick, when they start singing, your hair. Oh, I had hair back then, just like it's just like you cannot believe the power of their voices. It's just something supernatural, and they're great performers. They send their love beam out to the audience. It's like a thing. It's a real palpable thing, and it's great. Performing with Mick was always great. He was just always 100% for the audience.
Was that a lot of work though? I mean, does suddenly someone on the tour or the crew say, "Hey, tonight we're going to have a special guest, Tina Turner, and we've got to learn such and such a song"? Like, what's the behind the scenes for? Because I'm sure it was thrilling for you, but I'm sure people would be fascinated to hear, like, how did they approach you on the professional side that we have a special guest tonight and this is what you're going to need to do?
Yeah, that's about it. It's really, I mean, it's normal to have guests. And everybody in the band had a great, back catalog in their brains of any song that was important.
Would you
And
play with her?
I think we played a Stones song, but
Okay.
I got to tell you, this is so funny. The reason why I can't remember the song was because the thing that happened on stage is what I remember most, and it was so funny. So, you're told to give space to the person that comes out, but you don't know what they're going to do. So she comes out, and of course, she's a million beams of light, and people are freaking out and everything. And she's a really great performer, very friendly person. She does have a bodyguard that you notice off stage who's looking at you like a Secret Service agent. Like,
Wow.
don't think of touching her or anything, or he'll your little red light will appear on your body or something like that. So everybody was giving Mick and Tina some space. But the funny thing is that she came right out in those high heels, and she planted one of them right on Mick's foot. And I remember looking at Mick, and Mick looked at me, and he had this, look of pain on his face. And they just stood there and singing while we're playing it. I'm thinking, what's going on? Did she do that by mistake? And she's just nervous because she just ran out on stage? Or did she do that like, Mick, I want you to stay right here? I don't know what happened, but afterwards that was the speculation, like, did she do it on purpose? But that's my whole memory is just that, and looking down and seeing her high heel on his foot and looking at his face.
And did you interact with her prior to the show? Had you met her before the
we just shook hands, that kind of thing.
Okay, and no rehearsal at all?
No.
Wow, so it's very spontaneous. Well, of course not, but that's neat for the fans, because sometimes people do, there's different situations. Sometimes people do rehearse who are at different levels. They'll do one thing together or something, but it's neat that you don't have...
Yeah, it's funny. I've never, I played with Neil Sean a lot. Neil will come out at the end of G3 shows. No need for rehearsal.
That's cool.
He's just a superstar, Brian May, Billy Gibbons, same thing. No need to rehearse.
Billy Gibbons, great thing that you mentioned, because your kid in this new album that you've got, this the Elephants of Mars that Joe has. It's Joe Satriani again, and Sahara, very cool riff, and the video directed by your son Zizi Satriani. So when you mentioned Billy Gibbons, I just have to think, explain that connection.
Oh well, it's funny. There's no connection between Billy and my son that way, other than we got a really nice email from Billy the other day saying, letting ZZ know how much he loved the video.
Is that who is he named after ZZ Top, or how does he get that name?
No, it's a funny thing. My wife and I wanted to find a name that hadn't been used in the family, in our extensive family. We were just one day, and then we were at a bookstore, I think, looking at books for kids' names when my wife was pregnant. And so we went through the alphabet. We went, no, cousin this, aunt that, brother this, sister that. And we're going all the way down the alphabet. Well, finally we get to Z, and I'm like, I don't think I have a family member that has a name starting with Z. And she thought about it, and she goes, no, not. So we started looking, and we found a combination, Zachariah Zane, which meant God has remembered John, which is my father's name. And we just went wow, that's kind of interesting, because that's like a big name. So if you ever make it to be 95 years old, they call you by the full name, you know what I mean? But then we thought, but when you're 8 years old in the playground, everything is short, and we thought ZZ's a pretty cool nickname, and we would think, oh, ZZ Hill, ZZ Top, okay, we'd heard it before, and so it kind of stuck with us. And I think we shocked everybody when we said, no, that's his name. And we both of us have names that don't go together. Joe Satriani, like a regular, Anglo name with an Italian last name. My wife is Chinese, and she has Rubina as her first name. Her last name is Tan.
I like
character. So we thought, well, okay, we're not going to, give him a name again that doesn't somehow fit. We have to kind of come up with something brand new, something unique,
That's great that it's not ZZ Top, and then that Billy Gibbons, the guitar player from the band too. So that's really. Has he ever thought that was cool, or asked? Does he know the story that it's not has nothing to do with them?
No, he never asked. But actually, let me show you something here. Billy is also a great artist. The last time he came to a G3. He gave that to me. I don't know if you can see that.
I can very well.
Yeah.
We'll have it on the website.
He's so artistic. He's always making something, which is why he's usually late for almost everything, because he makes people stop off at the Kinko's here and this art supply store there. And he's always, showing up with gifts that he's made.
What a neat connection and a great story that the name is like that. You have the connection to him, but the name is not from him. You know, you mentioned this other cat, and he had such a big role in a few of these stories of yours. And recently on your site, I saw you were paying tribute to the cat Mick Brigden, who was a Bill Graham employee, veteran of that organization. He also managed you for decades,
Yes.
and so when I was thinking about exploring some of your connections, and then you just have mentioned Bill and that remarkable story standing there in Indonesia with Bill Graham by your side, the guy who's done all these shows. So, if you can walk us back through that and how you, when you think of Bill Graham, the greatest concert promoter of all time, what's your first experience maybe with him that just when you think back to it, it's got to give you like some sort of like chills. I mean, Bill Graham, I mean, all the things you've gotten to do with him.
Yeah, the first time I saw Bill Graham, I was with a drummer in my high school band, and we went to the Fillmore East
Okay.
in New York City, and we're walking in.
Who were you going to see?
I think we were going to go see Albert King,
Wow.
Jay Giles, and the Allman Brothers. It was close to I think it was like one of the last shows at the Fillmore East, and we're walking, we're getting really close to the front door, and my friend stops me and he goes, "That's Bill Graham. Whatever you do, avoid having him see you directly." And sure enough, Bill is there like chewing somebody out because they're doing something wrong that's not good for the fans. And it's just someone's hasn't cleaned a garbage pail, or they haven't opened a door, or whatever. He was always hands on.
Yeah.
He was prowling the gigs, just emptying ashtrays and making sure everything was going smoothly. And so that was the first time I saw him, was him yelling at somebody. And I thought, okay, remember, don't avoid that guy. And we kind of handed in our tickets and snuck in. I have to, this is a little side note. So years later, I'm having dinner with Bill and Mick Jagger. We were in Manhattan, and we were eating sushi or something like that. And that's also the night where Larry DiMarzio suddenly shows up, and he didn't even know I was there because it was still very quiet that I had joined the band. Anyway, I finally fessed up to Bill about something, and because I said, I was telling him about that first time I saw him, and then he was chewing somebody out, and I said, it was the last show, and at the end of the show, people started to like take souvenirs from the theater. And I said, and I was kind of laughing about it. And I said, my friends and I, the seat was kind of torn up because the Fillmore East was kind of a tattered theater, And I said, I still have a piece of the seat, And he looked at me totally seriously, like he was not happy to hear this story. And I was kind of shocked because I thought he'd laugh. But he didn't. He just looked at me and it was like, wait a minute, you're telling me you tore off a piece of the seat in my theater, and how Bill with his sound of his voice and everything.
You do it great.
Suddenly I was like a little kid again, like, sorry, Mr. Graham. And of course, Mick is watching us laughing the whole time. He's watching the whole thing unfold. And so I thought, next time I'll keep my mouth shut about those stories. So here's the other thing that's so funny about this thing, my connection with them. Around the same time, there was an outdoor venue called Gaelic Park. Must have been in the Bronx.
Oh, yeah, it is.
Right. And I went to see, who did I see? Who was on? It was a big bill that night. And Steve Marriott, Humble Pie, but I think Clem Clemson was in the band at the time. Frampton had left by then.
Okay.
And one of my friends was a really big, muscle-bound looking guy. He looked like Arnold Schwarzenegger for some reason. And it was great to go to concerts with him because we'd always go to the backstage and he'd be like, "You guys need some help?" That kind of thing. And they'd always say, yeah, because, back in the early Wild West days of rock and roll, there weren't like professional roadies. It was just big guys that could pick stuff up, So I wind up on stage after the show and I'm trying to like help them put Marshall heads in cases. And I'm just a little kid, pretty scrawny. Eventually I wind up off stage back where there's a limo waiting, and there's Steve Marriott. And I go up to Steve, and I'm like, whatever I said, just a little kid. And he was really kind, and, put his arm around me, shook my hand, said, thanks for everything. Then all of a sudden, this other guy comes around, this other British guy. And he's like, hey, we got to go. We got to go. No, you got to go out. You're not supposed to be here, and whatever. And I never forgot the sound of this guy's voice. Turns out that guy was Mick Brigden. He
Amazing.
winds up being my manager for decades.
Amazing.
And what a interesting period, me being a high school kid in the early 70s, and the people I meet and how they figure into my later life. And, just getting managed by Bill and that whole team, which was Kevin Burns and Arnie Postelnik, Morty Wiggins, who's my manager now, Bill, and of course Mick Brigden. And yeah, it's been a crazy year because we lost Arnie Postelnik, we lost Mick, we lost Kevin, several other people from that office. Unfortunately, it's just been a devastating 18 months of people leaving us, but we're here and we're going to carry on.
No, I mean, and you rep them well by, and that's the great thing. There's a great tribute and a lot of detail at Joe's site because Joe had that unique relationship, and that's great. So that dude went on, you're saying, back to Mick, he went on to work for Bill. At that time, he was working for like Humble Pie or something, and then eventually would be part of Bill Graham Presents.
Yeah. Mick Brigden's got great stories, from that time. He would tell me things all the time. I mean, he was telling me a story many years ago about he was picked up Leslie West because he was working for Felix Popularity in Mountain when he first moved here from London, and he wound up picking up Leslie and going over to Jimmy's place and Jimi Hendrix, and just sitting there watching the two of those guys jam for hours and hours. I mean, those were the kind of stories that show you what life was like in the early days of rock music. And I had to live vicariously through all these stories of Mick Brigden's because he was there. He was at Woodstock,
Right.
He told me this great story where Bill Graham was telling him, don't let Mountain go on when the sun is up. So Mick had to keep stalling Michael Lang and the guys at Woodstock, saying that their equipment wasn't there or they couldn't find Leslie, or, hard to hide somebody like Leslie West, but he stalled them until the sun went down, and then finally let, Mountain come out and play, which is also when I found out that Mountain's Corky Lang is actually playing, it's actually uncredited, but he's actually playing on Going Home, the
10 years
famous
after?
track from the movie. Apparently they didn't record the drums, so Alvin Lee, in the movie, Alvin Lee 10 years after, it's just jamming. It's a great moment of the Woodstock movie.
Huge.
But they forgot somehow to record the drums, and so months later they hired Corky Lang of Mountain
to overdub that part.
Overdub the drums, yeah.
Rick Lee, was that the dude's name who had been the original drummer? Yeah, I remember, because I saw Alvin Lee one time in '87. He had that guitar, that same like hollow body. What was that? What was that? Yeah, and it had like the Woodstock symbol on it or something. It was
it was like a 335 with an extra pickup in the middle.
Yeah, it was badass. That was a great guitar.
I've got an Alvin Lee pick somewhere that he gave me. I only met him once. Really, really nice gentleman. I played along with Alvin Lee records a lot when I was a kid.
Oh, I bet.
His style.
Yeah, and he was at that time seen as like this lightning fast. I mean, when I was a little kid, for sure, he had that rep. And when you think you were saying, that Mick, you had to live vicariously through some of the late Mick Brigden's stories, but flashing back to that era with Mick and certainly with Bill, maybe separately with Bill for many more years, really, actually. Times that you were not at the gigs, times maybe, because we were doing this thing, we had Steve Cropper on, and he was telling us some fascinating stories about Dock of the Bay and how it was written at Bill Graham's house out in Sausalito or something like that. And,
Mill Valley.
Yeah. And so when I think about like personal times with Bill Graham at his places and stuff where you kind of like, because I know you have a lot of memories with the dude professionally, but are there personal ones where you got like another cool person was there with you guys, or just times that you got to be with him at his homes and spend time doing specific things or with specific people, maybe even playing music in those places?
Oh, wow. Well, I remember we had a really crazy time at Bill's house for the West Coast record release party for Flying in a Blue Dream. Um, and the crazy thing was that right before then, I flew to New York to have the real record release party.
Like a public sort of thing.
Yeah. And of course, I remember landing at JFK and I hear people talking about fire, earthquake, bridge collapse. And I'm going, what's everyone talking about? So finally I went up to somebody and I said, what are you talking about? And they said, oh, the Bay Bridge in San Francisco's collapsed and the whole city is destroyed. And I just flew in from there, you know? So then what followed was I couldn't connect with my wife for about 3 days. I was just going out of my mind. She was safe, but she couldn't get over the bridge to Berkeley at the time. So she was stuck, of all places, in the marina that really got hit the worst in the city for the earthquake. But I mean, you know, all my people are there in San Francisco in the Bay Area, and I've lost touch with them, but I'm supposed to be in New York City living it up with my record release party. We somehow go through with it, but the real positive record release party was at Bill's house, and Bill's house up on the hill in Mill Valley was really a trip, especially you know, the big Grateful Dead symbol that you get you know, greeted with when you go through the big gates. And but the house itself just being filled with everyone celebrating this album, and Bill being the bon vivant that he was, just the perfect host. But there was one thing that was really interesting about that. This is really just like a side story about Bill that connects to that very first time that I avoided him when I was 13, 14 years old. Was that later that night we're wandering around and I went over, he had a like a sunken squash court on the property. And so when you walked in, you walked in and there was like a balcony and you looked down on this squash court, and he's in there playing. He may have been playing with his son. I'm not sure. Maybe it was David at the time. Right. But he was so aggressive. Like, I noticed it right away. And I forget, maybe I was with Jeff Campitelli or somebody like that. And we looked at each other like, whoa, like, isn't this supposed to be a friendly game? But it was like, Bill was like taking it like very seriously. And eventually we left because it was uncomfortable. Oh. And I thought that's the same guy that I saw screaming at people outside, right. You know, and he's just like, he never gave up. He was just one of those guys. He wanted to win. He wanted to achieve. He took everything, whether he was playing or it was business, he took it seriously. And when he took care of his people, he took care of, I mean, there he was. He invited all these strangers to his house, you know, to
right, his own house to do this thing. Right. Yeah. That says a lot. And were there guests that you remember, like people, like industry stars and stuff at the house for your party or other times?
Oh, no, I think it was mainly press. I mean, it was back when you would invite a lot of press.
Wow.
And there might be, you know, 30 journalists there.
To
you know,
his
like,
house. You're right. That is like unheard of by a lot of, that's such a personal way. And it says a lot about Bill's did you ever play for him at his place? Never.
No, I don't think that ever. Okay. I mean, he'd seen a million shows.
Yeah. Well, I meant more of like, I don't mean more for that, but like doing if there was ever, like when you mentioned the media, sometimes they would do, like in Boston, we'd have Frampton and people like that. Sometimes at our Oedipus, and you remember Oedipus at BCN. So, I mean, there would be, you know, people would be playing at his house in the living room. So that's what I was or Lenny Kravitz playing at his house in the living room, that kind of stuff. So I was just seeing if that sort of like, have you ever had to do that with radio where you went and had to stroke out the program director at a big commercial station by doing one of those things at their place?
No, I remember doing that for distributors. That
Okay.
was the thing in 88 and 90. I think it started to fall apart after that, but you'd go to some place in, Indiana, Illinois, wherever the big distributor place was,
Right.
and you'd be playing, and you'd it would be funny because you would meet like Lenny Kravitz, and then you would, I remember one I went to, and I'm sitting there hanging out with Steve Jones from the Sex Pistols, and we're looking at each other like, what are we doing here?
Yeah.
We're appealing to these people who stack the records and order the records. So like, please don't screw this up for us. And you're supposed to give a speech, and then you play a little, and it's always terrible because they're all drunk and it's a convention room, and it's regrettable, but some people do it well. I mean, some people take it very seriously, and other people like me just sort of fish out of water. Just like feels a little funny. But I did a lot of playing at radio stations because, I mean, my success was because of really fantastic DJs. They just great people who decided all on their own to play instrumental guitar music on their shows.
Right. It's
So there were guys
pioneering.
like Redbeard or the guys at KLOS in LA. They helped me so much. Jonathan Clark in New York City. I mean, just really supporters. And yeah, so of course I'd go there and play if they wanted me to play.
No, it's cool. With you have been supported a lot, and it's a pioneering thing what those people did to get that kind of music onto the air. Was definitely taking chances, and the record is filled with so many different kinds of sounds too. It's really remarkable how from the Bluefoot groovy, bluesy, very clean kind of feel, that like tension and release, almost had like this made me reminded me the way the guitar was working like of Tower of Power for whatever reason, and I kept thinking of them because of your association in the Bay Area. You've never done anything with them, have you?
No, but one of the first guys I ever played with when I came to California was Dave Garibaldi
Wow.
from Tower Power. I mean, I met him by accident. I think I came out here. I didn't know anybody. I answered an ad in the classified paper, pre-internet,
Wow.
and I met this guy, a bass player named Dave Dunaway, and he said, "Well, every couple of weeks, me and a bunch of friends get together in my living room and we play. So bring charts and your guitar, that kind of thing." So I walk in there, and there's Dave Garibaldi, and I'm like, "Whoa!" And of course he was amazing and super nice, and they played my charts and stuff, and it was very exciting. So that was my connection. But yeah, the couple of the songs like Pumpin' and Night Scene, very Tower Power-ish kind of thing. I really leaned on my bass player Brian Beller to try to do that kind of intense bass playing.
That's neat about the record is there's another one that's the same thing. It's like there's these flavors, and you, because maybe it's that instrumental approach you have to the way you do records, the songs have totally different flavors as opposed to a lot of bands that have a product and there'll be 10 new songs and they generally sound the same. Like you have one of these new ones, East 104th Street, New York City, 1973. It's my favorite on the whole album. Has this
Oh, thank you.
really nice jazz feel, some bass on it,
Yeah.
keys. Talk about the title, what it means to you, and why. Like what is it? What's going on right there?
Okay, so that address between, I don't want to cause anybody any grief, but between First and Second Avenue. So it used to be called Spanish Harlem. I think maybe it's still called Spanish Harlem.
Okay.
On that block, my grandparents moved when they arrived from the Italian world back in early, probably 1906. And my father was born on that street and raised right there. And as I grew up as a little kid, I visited my grandparents every weekend and hung out in that, which back then I thought it was the most fun place ever. Playing on the streets and the neighborhood and everything. But as time went on, as you know, in the 70s, New York City hit a rough patch. I mean,
Sure.
it was rough.
Yes, yes.
And, but my grandmother, like a lot of immigrants, she just refused to move. And her three sons, one of which was my dad, kept, pleading with her, please, come out to Long Island with us, move to Florida with the other son or something like that. But she just wanted to stay in that apartment, and maybe her memories and everything, and her other
Her attachment to it.
friends that she's had for decades,
Yeah.
Um, but as that got worse and worse, that's when I was coming of age, and I started to work there, and work in the clubs in the cities, and so just the whole vibe of that place, and it's now it's nice. It's gone through a bit of a renaissance. When I took my wife there the very first time she went to New York City, I think it was in early '81, something like that. My grandmother's building was the only building occupied on that street. And I think there were only two people occupying her building. The rest of it was bombed out. No glass in any of the window structures. I remember there was a burned out car in the front area of the school. There was a little grammar school that was halfway down the block. I mean, the place looked completely like a war zone.
Wow.
And it was totally economic. It was all because of absentee landlords. It was horrible, but she refused to move, and she passed away at 96 while she's still living there.
Unbelievable.
She just loved that neighborhood, I guess. Yeah, that was crazy. But anyway, so the song really represents that vibe. I'm learning how to be a musician. I still love the rock, the jazz. I mean, I'm basically a heavy rock kid, a rock and roll kid, but I've grown up with classical music and jazz music and rock and roll and funk and blues, and I'm playing in funk bands and rock bands. And so it's, I've never let go of that eclectic musical upbringing that I was lucky to get,
Totally.
And,
Totally. I mean, it's all on that record, man.
Yeah, it is. We just put everything on there.
No, I love it. As a final question, on that note, exactly what you were sort of saying, because there's so many different kinds of flavors and so many people inspired you, and you've been privileged to have the kind of gigs that have put you in places where occasionally you've gotten to actually say to some of your heroes, like the way you described with Bill. That's an excellent example of experiences you had as a kid with them. Have you ever been able, I'm sure you have, are there particular, as a final story or memory that you've got, meeting any of the guitarists that really, really shaped your sound, who you maybe didn't get a chance to work with, but who you've gotten the chance to maybe run into and say to them and share to them, to their face, what they meant to you, and kind of like the reward that comes with being able to finally make that connection?
Sometimes you get lucky with that, and you can, for whatever reason, you have that moment with them, like with working with Mick Jagger. Of course, Mick was just super personable, because you wind up eating dinner with him a million times and hanging out at his apartments, and that's just the way he is. Brian May the same way, very, personable with everybody that he meets, and loves to talk about music, and generous with his time and everything, But then there are some people that are a bit, for whatever reason, you never quite figure out, like, why didn't that click? And I can tell you the story about me and Jeff Beck, and I love Jeff Beck, and he's just like, one of the icons in my world of guitar. And I had met him, let's say, well, we were doing the first Chickenfoot record.
Okay.
And we were at Skywalker, and we heard that Jeff was playing in Oakland. So we quickly finished the song. Probably should have worked on it a little longer. We finished the song. We went over to Oakland to see Jeff. And of course, he was just mind-blowingly great. And afterwards, you got to say hi to him and everything like that. And he was kind of tired maybe after the show and everything.
You had never met him before?
I'd never met him. Okay. And I, didn't get a chance to really say much, because we were backstage, and, Sammy and Chad and everyone was, throwing a lot of energy around. But a few months later, we wind up doing the same gig. So we're playing Boss Pop in Belgium, right? I think that's where it is. And so it's, festival. So there's, you wind up eating in a tent with 100 stars and
Outdoor thing you're doing.
Outdoor kind of thing. It was really fun. So we're backstage, and I'm with Tal Wilkenfeld, the amazing bass player, who's playing with Jeff and Mike Anthony and Chad and Sam, and my son is there, and we're all just playing. We all just would, before going on stage, we would just, whoever was around, if you could play something, we gave you an instrument and we would just sit there and play. So Jeff comes walking in the room, and of course he sees his bass player playing, and he looks right at me, and I'm ready to go, like, Jeff, so good to see you again. And Sammy gives him a guitar to play, right? And you have to understand that he's been watching, like, everyone takes a solo, everyone does something. It's all good natured. And Jeff gets the guitar, and he just like goes nuts on this guitar. I mean, I didn't even seen him do that on stage. He just like put everything into this performance. And there's really like only 12 of us in the room. I mean, it's not like there's press or a camera. But he just completely goes nuts and plays great. And then he just gets up and hands the guitar back to Sam, and Sam's kind of stunned because he's thinking we're going to have a conversation, with our instruments. And then he walks out of the room. And so we're all just like, aren't we just having fun here, And we all looked at Tal, and Tal was like, that's Jeff, I guess, And that was the last time I saw him.
Wow.
And it was, so that was, that was not like what I had envisioned,
What a great, I love stuff like that. It's like movies that just end on a dime, and you don't, I'm serious, dude. I love stuff because you don't know exactly what happened. That's it's Joe Satriani, and just sharing so many cool stories and really making me have to work to figure out what we're going to edit out and try to play on the radio. You were really, you were doing it. The Elephants of Mars, new record, and still on track for April 8th, yeah?
Yes. Very excited about that.
And most of the people getting that thing is that they're getting like to play it on Spotify. They're buying a CD. What happens?
There is no stone left unturned here. We've got the video out for the first single, Sahara. Right. We're going to be doing 2 more like casual singles leading up to a video and full release of the title track, The Elephants of Mars. And then there's streaming on every streaming platform you can imagine. And there's vinyl, of course, double, because it's a really big record. So we got a double vinyl colored, beautiful package. We have a very special CD package with original artwork. The company I'm working with now, Ear Music.
Yeah, I know who they are.
They're just fantastic. My good friend Max is heading up the division for us, and he's been doing Chickenfoot for us since 2009. So we've had a long relationship. So it's really great to be putting this record out on Ear Music. I'm thrilled.
Do you buy records though? I mean, so the format, I'm saying that people are gonna. So most of the people, are they gonna be like just listening to it? You think on the Spotify, or they're gonna buy the CD, or they're gonna buy the or is it just gonna be split because there's just so many different kinds of people or something?
Yeah, that question gets asked like every week, and there's a different answer. Like you're reading the paper, like one day it says something like, for the first time ever, vinyl sales outpaced CD sales. And then a couple of weeks ago, somebody was asking me about doing a cassette version. And I'm like, are you nuts? I still think the majority of people around the world are streaming.
Okay.
I think the numbers are still more like that. Physical sales, within the physical sale chart, the LPs are moving up. But I think physical sales versus digital sales, it's either constant or, streaming is gaining.
You actually bought a record ever recently? Like a physical object?
No, I've been getting them from, friends who send them to me.
Yeah. But I mean, on your own, and I know how that is when you're in the music, this kind of business, people they're always giving you the stuff. But I mean, have you, just have attitude, because I'm sure people listen think that's fascinating final things, that you have not bought, last time you bought a record of any kind, it could be a CD, a vinyl, a special release thing, many decades
shaking my
ago.
head. I'm shaking my head on the radio, but I know it doesn't really come across. But no, I can't. When I signed with Sony, they were always giving me LPs. I mean,
Right.
I've got every reissue of whether it's Hendrix or Miles Davis or whatever. I've just got this huge record collection. But here's my confession to you right now: I do not own a turntable,
Whoa.
and there's a reason for it, which is that once CDs came out, I had it like up to here with vinyl problems. You know how many times I was charged because 1,000 records had a skip on it,
Wow.
or they would send me test pressings of the first runs, and there would literally be somebody else's music with my label on it, or my music with somebody else's label on it.
Unbelievable.
And that and the label would say, "Oh, we sent you a box. What do you think? How did it turn out?" And I go like, "Hey, do you realize
What's
that
on it?
it's like, I'm not Melissa Manchester's greatest hits. It's like, how does this happen?" So that's where after a while you go like, okay, I'm sick of records. Okay. There's so many problems. You can't even have all the bass on it. You know what I
Right.
mean?
Right. The
I mean, there's
limitations
so
of
much
the,
music that's dialed out, and this whole idea that people think it's analog, but it's not. It's made from a digital copy. So I threw my hands up and I said, "Look, I know I make music, and I want what I hear in the studio to be in the ears of my fans. And right now, the best way is, Amazon HD streaming
right.
or whatever the current formats are. They're still the best, and without the headache. But what I do love, of course, is the artwork, and you get to hold,
Yeah.
because I'm so old school. I wish I could hold the records when I listen to them, and I still listen to records in sequence. So, but yeah, vinyl is a funny beast.
That's great. But I mean, and the point though really is it's not just vinyl. No CDs, no vinyl. Last time you purchased anything, we were talking like many presidents ago. This was probably
Yes,
George
very
Bush's.
long time ago. The last time I actually purchased, I can't even remember. I mean, it's too far back. It's
Well,
really back.
don't be like Joe. He has a new record. He has a new record
Yeah.
out.
Now, don't include this in the interview because my new label will be very upset because they've made such a beautiful package.
Well, that's the funny part of it. But no, you want to look for the elephants of Mars, and great one, and great to use the word elephant. I love elephants, rhinos, all the animals that need a break like they do from people
Yes.
touching them. So it's nice to see their name in any use. And thrilled that you would spend so much time talking about the record and your life and dealing with promoting it during the pandemic and all these fascinating stories. And did you have fun today? Was this remotely interesting and engaging?
Yes, but you know what? The one thing you didn't ask me was
The title.
what's the story behind the title? And I'm sitting here. The reason why it came up again in my mind is because
Sure.
you can't see that on the radio, but there's the guitar pick that I just got yesterday. I
With
finally
the
got a
elephant
box
on it.
of the Elephants of Mars guitar pick. So when I got the idea to call the album "The Elephants of Mars," I had this whole vision about another story. So you probably know my writing partner at Satriani, Ned Evett. We write science fiction stories and
Yep.
develop them and try to get them made. And so the last year or so, the Crystal Planet story of ours is a comic book series, and it's going
Yeah.
to be a graphic novel. Um, anyway, so I come up with this story and I call Ned and I said, "Ned, I got this new story and I just happen to have a song and a whole album and everything." And I said, "It's the future. The scientists have terraformed Mars. What they don't know is that they've created a race of gigantic sentient elephants that are roaming a distant part, a hidden part of the planet. And the colonists now, led by this rock guitar playing guy, of course, revolutionary, has banded together with these sentient elephants to take back ownership of the planet, to stop the evil corporations of Earth from, destroying it by overmining and taking all the resources. And of course, Ned writes the whole story, script, character development, everything in about 8 hours. So when I go back to my producer, Eric, and the rest of the band, I said, not only do I have a title, for the record, but we've got the whole story, and it sort of got everybody enthused a lot more about the scope of the album.
Yeah.
And so yeah, hopefully we get that story produced. It'll be whatever, a series, an epic movie, a comic book, something like that in the future.
No, it's great and the artwork's cool because it's like futuristic looking and elephants to see them portrayed in that way, and the sound too. You always get these just wild sounds on that thing too when you listen to the record. I'm serious, like the guitar sounds. There's a really psychedelic guitar solo in the title track, "The Elephants of Mars." It's really it hits you when you put it on. That's the neat thing. Like you mentioned before, there's a lot of different flavors. It's not like a album that has southern rock or that has blues rock. It's an album that's just filled with, like we were talking about that tune from the street up in New York, or there's just vibrations that are vastly different. So stay safe, and if you ever do get back into touring, or maybe you bring your artwork out here, let us know. We'll certainly have you back on the show. Wishing you a lot of luck and safety with both of those ventures during this crazy time, Mr. Joe Satriani, and back on Off the Road. A thrill, man, really. I'm glad to have you back, and I do hope you had a lot of fun with us.
Yes, as always. Thank you very much for having me. Aloha, this is Joe Satriani. Man, what a thrill to be back on the Off the Road series
with my friend Dave Lawrence
to help this nonprofit radio station you're tuned to. Yep, you're tuned to a nonprofit radio station. They need people to be members. That's how they pay their bills. But no worries, you're a member, right? What? You're listening and not a member? Might want to think about that and make a little contribution. And to all the members, a huge mahalo from me to you.
Sounds good, Brother Joe. I appreciate it. Great to reconnect. Stay safe out there, my friend, and bundle up, because boy, is it cold over there. Wherever you.
It's okay. San Francisco, it's always spring here, so it's okay.
I know you got that breeze though that never get that relentless. Sometimes it's so cold. I don't know. When you're at Fisherman's Wharf, they're selling ski jackets, for a reason.
Yes. Yeah. A good down jacket is a year-round thing here.
Yeah, totally. All right. Be safe, my brother. And thanks again.
Right.
I really appreciate it.
Cheers. Thank you.
Take care, Joe. Aloha, bro.